Hi again, we're continuing our discussion on statistics, and I'd like to give you a couple of sample questions here, and then once we go through these two sample questions, your teacher, whoever that may be, is going to give you an assignment. And so here we go. So sample question number 1 goes like this. Bill wants to be on the bowling team, but he needs an average, that is a mean, of 151 over 5 games to be chosen. So unless he gets that average of 151, he's not going to make the team. His first 4 scores were 123, 131, 119, and 130. Question is, what must he score on his last game? That was what we want to know. Okay, so this takes the topic of the mean a little bit farther. Before you just calculate the mean, you add them all up, divide by the number of scores, and out pops your answer. Well, now I'm giving you the answer, and I need you to tell me one of the scores, which is surprisingly a lot like algebra. So we're going to set up an equation, and I'm going to use the lingo I taught you in the last video, and set up the equation, solve the equation, and that will give us our answer. Now, there's several ways of doing this. You could guess and check if you wanted, but that's not a very powerful way. Once you start throwing in decimals, and maybe you'd have a list of fractions, it would be a very weak way guessing and checking. Sometimes that would be even impossible. So let's go with the formula that we learned last time, and remember it looked like this. The mean, which is x bar, is equal to the sum of all the scores divided by the number of scores. So that is how we're going to get started. That is the formula we need, and we are going to solve for an unknown value. So what have we been given here? We've been given some information already. We were told he needs an average of 151. So that says x bar equals 151. Let's go straight down from there. I'm going to change colors here. I'm going to go x bar is no longer an unknown. It is known. 151 is what we are given. We are also told that he must get an average over 5 games. That tells us that n is equal to 5. Uh-oh, this is looking a little bit scary perhaps to some, but not really. Hang on, hang in there. Now this fancy notation up here, this says the sum of all the scores. Well, we don't know the sum of all the scores, but we do know 4 of them. And let me write those out like this. The textbook that we're using has an example where they write out all the given values, the ones that you know, and so that's what I'll do here too. So what do we have already? We've got 123 plus 131 plus 119 plus 130, and we know that there's going to be another variable. There's another number in there. And that's what we're looking for. So because we don't know it, let's just call it X. You could call it B, you could call it S, you could call it anything. I'm going to call it X. Remember, X represented an individual score. So what we'll do is we'll simplify this. And how are we going to do that? Well, let's take all these four numbers and turn them into 1. So let's do that. So we still have 151. Now if you add these up, I believe you get 503, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So 503 plus that unknown, all divided by 5. Okay, so I'll put my thing down a little bit there. So we are closer to our answer, but we still have some work to do. So let me just direct you the way you should go here. We need to dispose of the 5 and the 503 so that we have our answer all by itself, or isolated, as you might call it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remind you that when you have a fraction bar like this fraction bar is also collecting the entire top, which in a sense is a type of bracket. Okay, so I can't really take the 503 out yet because it's still connected to the X, but I can get rid of the 5. And the 5 in this case is a divisor, and as a result I'm going to undo that division by 5, and I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. Okay, 5 times. And when I do that, guess what? The 5 falls away and it reappears on the other side. So let's continue here. So I'm going to go 5 times 151. Turn it on. 5 times 151 is equal to 755. Is equal to 503 plus X. So 503 plus X. Okay, you know what? We're getting closer and closer. And you remember if I said 7 is equal to 2 plus X, you'd know exactly what to do. Well, this is the same thing here. So we will dispose of this 503. It's just sitting there. So how do you deal with a number that's just sitting there and it's positive? Well, you subtract it from both sides. So I'll do that. 503 away from there. Subtract 503. Writing a little bit smaller so I can get my full answer in there. And so we will evaluate this. Guess what we will have at the end? We'll have an X all by itself. So 755 minus 503, and that's 252. $252. He's got to score 252 on his last game. Now, I would like to go back into this. I want to see if I'm actually right or not, okay? So, let's just forget about this 151 for a second. And I want you to take these numbers, add them up, then add 252, and then divide by 5 and see if you actually get 151. Okay, so let's do it together. So we got 123 plus 131 plus 119 plus 130 and plus this so-called answer that we have here, we're going to find out in a minute if we're right, plus 252 equals 755. Oh, we've seen that number already today. And guess what? We took all those scores, divide by 5, see what happens. Divide by 5, and sure enough, you get 151. That is the right answer, 252. Now, I don't have any more room on this page to write this down, but a great B part would be, do you think he'll make the team? And if so, why or why not? Well, I don't think he'll make the team because he needs to get 252. According to what I see up here, he's scoring in the low hundreds. His highest score was 130. If he were to score 252, that would be totally unlike these other ones here. It's highly unlikely. It's possible, I suppose, that he could make the team, but it's highly unlikely that he'll make the team. 252 is practically, for all intents and purposes, it's practically double what he'd normally score. Okay, so yes, we know what the mean is, we know how to calculate the mean, but this particular grade, we are going beyond the simple calculating or adding and subtracting, dividing the other side and popping out a number. So we're going beyond that. Okay? So whenever you're trying to determine an unknown, name it with a letter called a variable, and away you go. Okay? And never lose focus of what it is you're trying to find out. In this case, we wanted to know what must he score on his final game or on his last game. Alrighty? So, I'll give you one more sample question and then your teacher will hand out an assignment. Okay, so let me adjust this guy here again. Sample question 2. The mean high temperature. Okay, so the average high temperature in Winnipeg, and my apologies for writing a short form here, but I had a memory blank for a minute. So Winnipeg last week was -1 Celsius. Okay, now we're talking about some negative numbers. The first 6 days had temperatures of, here they are, -8, -4, -9, +3, -1, and +2. The question says, what was the high temp on the 7th day? Now there's nothing too much different, nothing too much different from this example from the last one, because we're still trying to find out the temperature, an unknown. Let me get my face in the picture here. We're still trying to find out an unknown, which we will probably call some letter. And we've also got some negative and positive numbers. That's basically the new twist on this one. What was the high temperature on the 7th day? Well, I'm going to start out just as I did last time on sample question 1 with the formula for mean. Because how do we know we're talking about mean? Well, there it is. So the mean, let's go with the formula. X bar is equal to the sum of all the scores divided by n. And we know X bar, we know n, we know 6 of the 7 scores. So we need to find the 7th. So let's just talk this through here. We are given x bar, that's -1. So in Canada, we use the terminology -1. That's just the way it is. It is -1 as a number, but I don't think I'll talk about that anymore. -1. Now the sum of all the scores. There we go. We have these 6 scores here. Now, if you want, you can do this. Punch in the number -8, and then subtract 4, subtract 9, add 3, subtract 1, and then add 2. Okay, now that could turn into a bit of a lesson in adding and subtracting positives and negatives, but that's okay. So we're going to add these all together, and we get, let me just work this out here. I'm going to enter the number -8, because that's my starting point. And then I'm going to say subtract 4, subtract 9, plus 3, subtract 1, and plus 2. Plus 2. And that gives me -17. And you know what I would like to do? I'm going to quickly go through that again just to make sure I'm not making mistakes. So I'm starting with -8, -4, -9, plus 3, -1, plus 2. And sure enough, -17 is correct. So we have all the numbers we've been given total to -17. Springtime in Winnipeg. It's 40 below. I think they wrote a song about that. So -17 plus, remember that's the 6 days, plus an unknown temperature on the 7th day. Let's call that the letter T. The letter T is going to represent what we don't know. And that's a great letter because T for temperature. So -17 plus T, all divided by, remember what N is? Well, we're talking about last week. How many days in a week? Well, 7. So we're going to divide it by 7. You didn't see the number 7 in this word problem, did you? I mean, there are certain things that we know that kind of go unsaid sometimes. So that's an assumption. 7 days in a week. And so it looks like we have the same situation as we did last time. Okay, so I'm going to come in, and the work that I do to isolate T is going to be shown in a different color here. So I'm going to collect all this stuff like this. I'm going to multiply both sides by 7. When I multiply after dividing, guess what? It's as if the number was never there. So 7 times -1 is -7. And what do we have remaining over here? We have -17 plus T. Maybe at this point you can tell what your answer is going to be. Looks like I'm getting a little bit off kilter there. There we go. Come on, baby. So we have -17 plus T. I want to isolate the T. So the -17 is in the way. And the golden rule of mathematics is whatever you do to one side, of course you do to the other. Okay? So we have, if this is subtraction, you use the inverse operation. And the inverse operation to subtraction, or in this case it's a negative 17, the way we dispose of the negative 17 is by adding 17 to both sides. And believe it or not, you know this intuitively. If you were overdrawn at the bank and you had $17 overdrawn, how much would you have to put in the bank to get back to zero? Well, you'd have to put in $17. And so intuitively we know this. So let's go like this. The negative 17 and the positive 17, they cancel, leaving us with the following. Negative 7 plus 17 is equal to 10 is equal to t. Now the plus I can just disregard because everything is plus anyway, right? It's automatically positive. So, looked like it warmed up a little bit on that 7th day. So let's make a statement. I always like it when you make a statement. When you make a statement, it shows me that you know what you're talking about, and it just makes me feel comfortable that you've expressed what I want you to express. So you say the high temp on the 7th day was plus 10 degrees. Okay, if you just say 10, that's fine. And in the seasonal change, if somebody says it's 10, we don't even know if it's plus or minus 10. So that's the only reason why I put in the positive sign there. Okay, so that's all I have for that. Your teacher will be giving you an assignment right away. Make sure you look at what the question is asking. Underline it if necessary. Okay, so have fun, and I will see you soon. Take care.